Hey, greetings, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf, and I'm here with Dr. Peter McCullough. As you know, one of my personal heroes. Welcome, Dr. McCullough.
Thank you.
I always love to read Dr. McCullough's bio. He's an internist and cardiologist in academic practice in Dallas, Texas, and now has his own foundation, the McCullough Foundation, and is proud to be a part of the Wellness Company. He received his bachelor's degree from Baylor University and then completed his medical degree as an Alpha Omega Alpha graduate from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School. In addition, he completed his internal medicine residency at the University of Washington, cardiology fellowship, including service as chief fellow at William Beaumont Hospital, and master's degree in public health at the University of Michigan. Dr. McCullough is the expert of experts. He's broadly published on a range of topics in medicine with over 1,000 publications, 660 citations in the National Library of Medicine. He's a recipient of the Simon Dack Award from the American College of Cardiology and the International Vicenza Award in Critical Care Nephrology for his scholarship and research. His works have appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of the American Medical Association, Lancet, British Medical Journal, and other top-tier journals worldwide. He is the editor-in-chief, I'm not sure if that's still the case, but we'll check in our interview of Reviews in Cardiovascular Medicine and senior associate editor of the American Journal of Cardiology. And he serves on the editorial boards of multiple specialty journals. And the only reason I ask you to make sure that we've updated that in case anything has changed is that I know that you're such an effective voice for real medicine, so credentialed, so kind of indefatigable in presenting the facts based on your vast expertise that institutions keep hounding you, one after the other. So is there anything I'm leaving out that's important?
Yeah, there have been some shifts. Now, I have rotated off the journals you mentioned, but I'm now editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Cardiovascular Research and Innovation, a journal that's making great strides. And I'm the clinical section editor for the journal Science, Public Health, Policy, and the Law.
Wow.
And so, I can tell you as a writer and author and an editor, like you, I'm in the business of the written word. And the written word in the field of medicine, is what we rely upon in terms of evidence. And so when I, go to testify, and by the way, I'll be up for U.S. Senate testimony again on May 21st, some really key testimony on vaccine injuries. You'll see me, unlike others who appear before Congress, I will cite the first author in the journal of the evidence that I am presenting so people can examine the evidence themselves.
Good. I'm surprised that's not standard practice.
It should be standard practice. And I can tell you the best in academics can do that. When I testified in Congress about a year ago, I testified just a day before Anthony Fauci. He was right there in the same building, same panel. And I asked the panel, I said, you guys have just pounded me for 3 hours. And I cited the literature meticulously. I said, how many articles did Dr. Fauci cite in his testimony?
Great question.
Zero.
Shocking. Trust the science. Well, I mean, that's why you're such a trusted voice. I would say the premier voice of the experts in the health freedom community because of your rigorous scholarship, as well as, your kind of very courageous advocacy. So let's go to some topics that are in the news. Let's start with the role of the Surgeon General. There's been a lot of outraged voices in the MAHA world. Mine is one of them, initially with the nomination of Dr. Jeanette Nashewat, and then she was kind of sidelined due to apparently her having misrepresented aspects of her medical credentials, which is mind-blowing that the Trump team wouldn't have checked that properly before nominating her or floating her name. And then more recently, Dr. Casey Means has been not nominated, essentially, or mentioned. I'm not sure exactly how the process proceeds. You'll educate me. But I think nominated by President Trump as a candidate for Surgeon General. So I have strong reservations. I've written about them, but let's go to your knowledge base. Why does the role of Surgeon General matter, if it does? And speak to, these candidates, please.
We'd like to see the role of the surgeon matter now, particularly, emerging from the pandemic. Over the last several decades, it's been variable in terms of the impact of the position. Largely, it's dependent on who's been the Surgeon General. Now, before 1970, it was a military position. They oversaw the military medical corps. Since 1970, the position, technically oversees the Public Health Service Corps of several thousand physicians. So, invariably, it's someone who has arisen out of the Public Health Service Corps, someone who potentially has even had medical service in the military. So many times you'll see them wear a military uniform, and they have become a political appointee. So if you look at Jerome Adams, he was two positions ago, he was the public health commissioner for the state of Indiana. So he had public health experience. He knew about these things. He had people reporting to him. He had experience. After him, Vivek Murthy, who served 2 terms, very distinguished medical career. He went to Yale and Harvard, trained at Brigham and Women's Hospital, one of the best medicine residencies in the United States. He held the position twice. Now, of interest, Murthy had received a George Soros scholarship and, represented us at the World Health Organization. It just goes to show you the leaning or the bent of the position. And Murthy is interesting. By the way, all the Surgeon General nominees, we very acutely look for endorsements from prior Surgeon Generals. This is very important. So Murthy had endorsement from some, but he had opposition from at least one. And the opposition to Murthy, he was born in 1977, was that he was too young.
Oh, wow.
He was too young, that someone had to have a certain, age and wisdom and medical experience to hold that position. Now with Neshuat, and now means we have had no endorsements whatsoever from prior Surgeon Generals. And of course, people are raising questions about basic issues in their medical backgrounds. Now, Neshuat attended medical school in the Caribbean, which is in general a proxy for not getting accepted into a U.S. medical school. Right. And then she comes over to the United States and does her residency, and there is a fraction of U.S. physicians who do that.
Can I jump in with a question there, Dr. McCullough? Sorry to interrupt. Is it not the case that the requirements for becoming an MD in the Caribbean can be shorter course of study?
Gosh, there are I don't know, I think well over 30 Caribbean medical schools. There's just a few that meet the same credentialing standards as the United States. So the first is we have to examine the university and do they meet the same accreditation standards. But as a general rule, for high-level positions, Caribbean graduates are just not in the running.
Wow.
Like I say, Murthy goes to Harvard and Yale. I mean, those are very difficult to get into pre-med and medical. And the other thing we look for, you read it off in my resume, is called Alpha Omega Alpha, AOA. So AOA is someone who's in the top 7% of all medical graduates of the top 50% of all medical schools.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So people have always asked, well, how do I find a top doctor? I said, see if they're AOA, Alpha Omega Alpha. That's a good check mark. Right. When I attended residency, I finished top of my class. I interviewed at Brigham and Women's. I ranked them, but ahead of them, I ranked University of Washington. So University of Washington in Seattle at the time was just slightly higher ranked than Harvard. So you want to see somebody who's met those levels of excellence, and many of the Surgeon Generals have. The reason why it's important is because I think a Surgeon General today, the most important thing they could do is they could write the Surgeon General's report on COVID-19 vaccine safety. And it would be just as impactful as Luther Terry did in 1964 when he wrote the Surgeon General report on smoking. Remember, doctors were presented the data on smoking in 1949 by Sir Austin Bradford Hill. Smoking caused lung cancer. Doctors refused to recognize this. They were smoking. They were advertising smoking. Nurses smoked, and they completely ignored the evidence. Luther Terry had the position and strength and had the data. 1964. So this went on for a couple of decades. He calls all the leaders to Washington, and he says, listen, I have bad news. Smoking causes lung cancer. You should have seen the look on the faces of these chiefs of medicine all over the country. What we have not seen in the first 100 days is anyone in the administration having the strength to call medical leaders from institutions into Washington to review critical data.
Wow. So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that there's a long established tradition of highly credentialed, institutionally credentialed, rigorously credentialed surgeons general that goes beyond or above partisanship, that transcends partisanship, essentially, that people are willing to endorse each other on the basis of their expertise. And that neither of President Trump's two nominees are in that category, it sounds like you're saying. So say more. Talk about Dr. Casey Means. I mean, I have my reservations, which, I can address, which have to do with her ties to, more than ties, her complete $313 million valuation funding by Silicon Valley biometrics harvesters, and her co-founders being Google and X, or Twitter and SpaceX connected co-founders and funders. So I'm worried about the access to all of our biometric data, as well as setting biometric pushing health policy. I'm worried that she's basically a stalking horse, a creation by Silicon Valley. But what are your worries? That they won't be the same as mine? Or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. Maybe you don't have worries. Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout. Have you ever wondered why your brain can feel foggy even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout, it could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan McDonald reveals a direct link between chronic parasite infections and neurological diseases, such as multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. More reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The wellness company has a solution for you: ivermectin and mebendazole, the gold standard parasite solution, now combined in one cleanse combo, designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmick. Fill out a quick intake form and you'll get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. MAHA is officially here, and the wellness company is making hard to get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to dailyclout.health and use code dailyclout to save $60 off plus free shipping on all orders. Cleanse your body today. Get rid of parasites today. Thank you.
Boy, I'm just an average doctor. It sounds like she may be a e-commerce medical data whiz. But from a medical perspective, what caught my eye is when the LA Times broke the story, they interviewed her program director. Mm-hmm. And what she had conveyed to the public in her book is that, which is common as a resident, is she became disenchanted with medicine when she saw, for the first time, she saw obese patients struggling with diabetes. And it's very common as a resident for the first time to say, oh my Lord, so much adult illness is self-induced. Right. Especially as an ear, nose, and throat physician. She was seeing throat cancer, which is, heavily driven by alcohol and smoking.
Oh my God.
So it's common, and many residents write diet books or do something. Her story is she became disillusioned and she wrote a self-help book or what have you. But then when the LA Times breaks the story and said, wait a minute, she actually had psychiatric problems. Mm-hmm. And she had to take a leave from her residency for 3 months. And then when invited to come back, she never came back. Huh. Wow. That's a different story. And so, I can just tell you as a parent, my son is a resident right now. I know it's difficult. I know there are tremendous strains on residents. And I would just give the paternalistic advice to a young person like Means to say, listen, go back, finish your residency, take the exams. I know they're hard. And then start your medical career. And then maybe she would be a fine surgeon general if she got public health experience, and 20 or 30 years later, she could be. But we have so many well-qualified people right now. There would be no reason to try to take someone who's kind of struggled and not even completed their residency.
Wow, that's kind of a bombshell. I hadn't heard it put that way. I hadn't seen the LA Times piece. You said LA Times, correct?
Right. So LA Times. And, of course, people are worried about misrepresentation. So Neshuet, it was misrepresentation. She kind of implied where she did residency was her medical school, and now Means misrepresenting, what her story was for not finishing in ear, nose, and throat.
Wow.
Residency and not getting any clinical experience. And, right now, our deputy surgeon general is a nurse, Denise Hinton. But Denise, she's a board certified nurse. She's qualified. She's taken her nursing exam. She has clinical experience as a nurse. She has administrative experience supervising others. Both Neshuet and Means had no administrative experience. And this is very important when one is running a big operation. I can tell you, I was the chief academic and scientific officer for Ascension Health in the St. John Providence Ministry. I mean, I had oversight over 3,000 doctors. I had to know about credentialing, about, what happens when physicians have problems on the job, the vision for what we want to do in healthcare, in my domains of the science and medical aspects of things. Neither Neshuet or Means have that high level experience. Now, one would come to mind would be Joe Ladapo, who is a Harvard trained MD, PhD. He's been the Surgeon General of Florida, so he understands how public health works in Florida. He has experience, he's every bit as experienced as Jerome Adams from Indiana, who made the grade. So one would wonder, why not Joe Ladapo?
Or you, I might note, but that's my observation. Well, let me jump in and drill down into something I think I'm hearing. First, I saw in a 2020 interview with Dr. Means that she referred to her residency as her career as a surgeon. Is that accurate?
No, as a resident, they are learning how to do procedures, and an ear, nose, and throat doctor is doing various, largely, otolaryngolic in examinations and then surgeries. It is it's a 5-year training program, and but it's not a surgical career. The surgical career is once she graduates from residency, which she hasn't done yet, and then she becomes board certified, so she has to pass a very rigorous exam. Then she can launch her career and then independently see patients, examine them. She can independently prescribe medications and do procedures.
Wow. So it's more than that she didn't finish her residency, which a layperson can follow that far. It's that she hasn't, at the end of that residency, sat and taken and passed a series of rigorous exams that would allow her to treat patients. Is that the bottom line?
That's the bottom line. And so, we wouldn't want to be deceived and think that at this time she's a qualified physician. So I think this is very important for the public to know. Wow. The medical establishment, let's say the chiefs of medicine at major medical schools, the AAMC, the AMA, the American College of Physicians, American College of Surgeons, they're simply not going to support someone who's dropped out of their residency to be the U.S. Surgeon General. I just think there's been a grave mistake made by the administration. I know they want people good in the media. I mean, listen, I'm a frequent contributor on Fox News like Neshawet. I mean, that's fine. I mean, I can handle myself on primetime TV. I've seen you countless times on CNN over the course of my adult life. You can handle yourself on prime time. I understand the administration wants those qualities, but they should seek those qualities among someone who has the other qualifications.
Of course. Well, that's quite mind-blowing. It's really interesting to me that there's been almost no coverage explaining what you just shared. So is it accurate to call her Dr. Means, or is that not quite accurate because she's not?
She's a doctor. She graduated from medical school, but she has not, completed her residency. She hasn't fulfilled the criteria to become, a board certified surgeon.
So she can't.
The name of the office is the Surgeon General.
Oh my goodness. She's not a surgeon.
She is not a surgeon.
Wow. All right.
She hasn't met the criteria. Now, I'm not a surgeon either, but I am a board certified medical doctor. Dr. Vivek Murthy was a board certified medical doctor.
Wow.
The point is, at times, the office, if you look at under Luther Terry, oh my gosh, that changed the calculus about the hazards of tobacco and smoking. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. He had a major influence.
So it's not a symbolic role necessarily.
It largely is from administration, but at key inflection points. Another one was C. Everett Koop. C. Everett Koop basically ushered in the era of pediatric intensive care unit, which was revolutionary. Neonatal ICUs, pediatric trauma units was revolutionary. Wow. And there are people who are notable. Another one who I got a chance to know is a former HUD secretary, Ben Carson. Right. I mean, Ben Carson has a storied career as a neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins. He was the first to separate Siamese twins attached at the head and have them survive. I mean, these are the types of people that rise into positions, cabinet level or below positions, that Americans can look up to. Ben Carson, a perfect example.
You have to stay healthy and well at times like this. You know that I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/dailyclout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it's pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice. And they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/dailyclout and start your experience of transformation today. Right. Very true. Wow, that's so eye-opening. So let's go to another headline, a recent headline since you and I last spoke, which is, 2 big executive orders. President Trump, few weeks ago, I believe, signed an executive order banning gain-of-function research, and he's due to make an announcement today about the cost of prescription medications. Why don't you take those in any order you like?
Well, let's take the gain-of-function research. We have over a dozen biosecurity level 4 labs in the United States, Naomi, and one's in Galveston, Texas. These are scary. These are like the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We're talking people wearing hazmat suits, critical reverse ventilation, hood protectors. I mean, they are dealing with viruses, bacteria, fungi, spores that literally could get the whole world sick. It could be worse than a nuclear bomb in terms of what they're working on in Galveston, Texas, for instance. I mean, this is scary business. We have over 130 biosecurity level 3 labs. And there are papers published on leaks that happen, hazard spills and leaks, hundreds upon hundreds of leaks. And it's clear that these are not stringently regulated. The Biden administration in summer of 2014 put out legislation on regulations on what's called labs dealing with pathogens of pandemic potential that are dual purpose, meaning that they could cause great injury to the world, but at the same time, they could be used to make vaccines or therapeutics, so-called military countermeasures. Well, the reason why universities are in this business is richly funded by the military, DARPA, the National Institutes of Health, foundations. This has now replaced research in nuclear bombs and missile defense systems.
Wow.
The new hot topic to research, again, richly funded, is biological threats to humanity and countermeasures. Nuclear missile defense system. And the lab or the person or the country that holds both, they hold power.
Right. Then arguably we should be researching biological weapons and countermeasures if the rest of the world, including our adversaries, are doing so, playing devil's advocate. What's the advantage of President Trump signing an executive order to end this research?
Well, people have made that argument that, listen, others are doing this. We need to keep up, just like with a nuclear arms race. And then others stepped in and said, listen, we've got to stop proliferation of nuclear weaponry. And so in a sense, this ban on gain-of-function research is just like the first steps in banning nuclear proliferation.
Yes, but again, just to push back for the sake of argument, nuclear treaties are bilateral in our history overwhelmingly. We don't unilaterally disarm, at least not during the Cold War or through the height of the nuclear era. So isn't there a risk that we're disarming in terms of biological weaponry unilaterally, and our enemies are escalating their research? I mean, the Wuhan lab isn't closing.
Well, remember, the United States is funding this all over the world. So to, co-fund and co-produce SARS-CoV-2 in the Chinese lab, I mean, what a blunder that was.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, we want to get these off of U.S. soil for sure. We don't want the next epicenter of a deadly pandemic coming out of Galveston, Texas.
Sure.
I don't want that in my
state. You don't want that. You're in Texas.
Okay. So, this is where we should have very good intelligence. Our intelligence community is heavily manned. There are so many intelligence units. We should expect our government to have a complete inventory of every biolab in the world.
Right.
And if our commander in chief is the master of the art of the deal, let's start seeing deals to get others to shut down these labs.
Right. That's very smart. And I guess I should note for the record that there's been a ban on gain of function before. President Obama set it in place, and then Ralph Barrick out of the University of North Carolina, with the collusion of Dr. Fauci, pretty much went around the ban on gain of function research by just outsourcing the same studies to the Wuhan lab. That's my understanding. Is there anything you want to say to that?
Well, there's a big difference between banning federal funding for gain of function research and banning the research itself.
Oh, so Obama didn't ban the research. He just banned the federal.
No, just so Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, recall a year or two ago, it was found that the Chinese had their own private gain of function lab in California.
Oh,
So, and it was legal because there was no ban in them, doing gain of function research.
Oh, I had not thought that through sufficiently. So basically, President Trump's executive order is stronger than Obama's ban.
Right. That's my understanding. The Biden regulations that came out last summer were very light. They said, well, it's voluntary reporting. Just let us know what you're doing. There was no teeth in it whatsoever. There were no audits, safety inspections. I mean, think about this. If these labs are operating, boy, there should be rigorous inspection. How many leaks have you had?
Right,
What's
exactly.
going on? And these are not just human, but also veterinary. McCullough Foundation research suggests even the current bird flu outbreak occurred due to gain of function research done at the USDA poultry lab in Athens, Georgia. That's a government lab.
That's a huge story. I'm so glad your foundation is breaking this kind of important news, but I also wish it was front page news. That's a gigantic story that has not been covered at all in the coverage of bird flu. I'm also thinking of evil Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation programs like the release of genetically modified mosquitoes in Florida and malaria-bearing mosquitoes. I mean, gain of function research the technology is expanding to include so much that might not even happen in a lab, that might happen with like weaponized ticks or weaponized water supply, and we have to have stronger policies protecting the American people from being experimented on. Is that a fair statement? What I just said?
I completely agree, and we have to be open to the different methods where products of gain of function research could come out. And let me say briefly, gain of function research is of two major types. One is genetically modifying the organism to be more transmissible and more lethal. That would be SARS-CoV-2 in the Wuhan lab, or it can be serial passage. Serial passage is taking a whole variety of strains and keep testing them in animals until ultimately one is able to pass from animal to animal. And that's what happened with bird flu. They were working with mallard ducks until they got a strain of bird flu that could pass from mallard duck to mallard duck. Invariably, one of the ducks got out and escaped and started spreading this all over. You never hear on the news how these farms actually get the bird flu to begin with.
Right.
Like, how does a farm in Indiana, then a farm in Michigan, then one in Washington State? Well, the answer is it's migratory waterfowl. The natural mallard ducks are spreading it around as they land on farms.
Oh my goodness. No, nobody has reported that at all, that it's basically iatrogenic, or it's caused by experimentation. That's shocking. And yeah, just thinking back on the history of sort of human evolution with disease, and I'm sure because we may have talked about it, but my sense of kind of the normal evolution of humans in relation to disease comes from reading 400 years of English literature and memoirs and biographies. As I'm not I'm not a medical scientist, I'm not a doctor, but it's fascinating because when people aren't kind of artificially weaponizing disease and danger in a lab, with all the risks of escape and so on, disease comes and goes, right? Over the last 400 years in human history, disease comes and goes. Would you say that the experimentation, gain of function experimentation that we've been describing is kind of really manipulating in a negative way the impact or the evolution of disease in relation to humans?
Well, for sure, in terms of the syndrome. So, look at this. Look at the, quote, natural Spanish flu epidemic. It was over with in 2 years.
Right.
2 years. COVID-19 pandemic, heavily genetically manipulated, mankind trying to do everything it can to combat it. Now we have a 5-year-long pandemic. I've just had some patients get COVID. Sadly, I had one die in December
Oh my God.
of this year. And I do think if this was a natural occurrence, a once in 100-year occurrence, it would have been over with in 2 years. And I do think if there was no intervention, it would have been over with in 2 years.
That's really interesting. I mean, isn't that how we evolved as organisms to, sustain the assault from a new pathogen and then to adapt and develop immunity or resistance to it?
Well, yeah, we develop resistance, and there's another principle called Mueller's ratchet, and that is what's called a razor. That's just a rule of thumb. Mueller's ratchet says through the course of a pandemic, the virus mutates to become progressively more weak, so it doesn't take out all of its victims. It still needs prey to prey upon. What we had here is we had this distorted situation where the COVID-19 vaccines were introduced, and then the virus mutated and quickly was resistant to the vaccines. Now, fortunately, it mutated to be a far milder form. Once we got to Omicron, there was a huge drop-off in virulence. And so there was a very important paper to quote by Chin and colleagues, New England Journal of Medicine, October of 2022, when someone had already been through the Delta or Omicron phase of the illness, the next episode of COVID had a 0% risk of hospitalization in that.
Wow.
0. That's very important. And this is among 59,000 prisoners and 17,000 staff. And the prisoners are heavily motivated to go to the hospital. So believe me, if they had anything, so we've been at a stage now where natural immunity is so powerful that, I personally don't even, test for COVID-19. I simply take a good history and ask them, have they had COVID in the past?
Wow. That's really heartbreaking. So these interventions are literally preventing the human race from adapting organically and naturally to new pathogens in the environment. It's very sad. And so let's touch, and I know it's new news and you may not, we don't know yet what it'll entail, but the president is due to give an announcement today, I believe, about lowering costs for pharmaceutical drugs. Do you have any inside information about that or any thoughts about that?
I'm very excited about the news. And I think this is going to apply to what's called branded pharmaceuticals. So as a cardiologist, over 90% of what I prescribe is generic drugs. So they're already low cost. I don't think they could get any lower cost. Wellness company, we have memberships, and at our middle and higher level memberships, we just ship the drugs for free.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's how cheap generic drugs are. So I don't think Trump's talking about lowering the cost of generic drugs, which essentially are offered for free. But he's talking about lowering the costs of drugs. Let's take a blood thinner like Eliquis. And we prescribe so much blood thinners now since the pandemic, since both the virus and the vaccine caused blood clots. And so here in the United States, Eliquis has a cost. Let's say it's $500 a month. But in Canada or Europe, it could be $100 a month. And so the question is, why are other westernized countries paying such a lower dollar amount? And what the pharmaceuticals companies will say is that, listen, it's willingness to pay. There's such a market demand, and we can set the price. And as long as the companies don't compete on price, so there's a competing drug called Xarelto and Pradaxa, as long as they hold the price about the same across all the brands, which is collusional, and they do it, they can maintain that margin.
Hey, everyone, it's Naomi Wolf, and I have a message. President Trump is in the process of what he calls draining the swamp. But many in the MAGA movement and the MAHA movement are asking if he'll expose the entire pandemic. There's enough public evidence for people to be concerned who injected themselves in what has turned out to be a massive experiment. If you were compelled to get the shot for work, travel, maybe you just trusted the system, check out this natural solution formulated by hero doctor Peter McCullough in collaboration with the wellness company. They just leveled up their original detox formula, and it costs $30 less. We are introducing the 3-in-1 Ultimate Spike Detox. It's now conveniently consolidated into a single capsule with 4 times more nattokinase, 500 milligrams of bromelain, and 500 milligrams of turmeric root extract. Nattokinase, an enzyme researched for its anti-clotting effects, may work to break down spike proteins. Combined with bromelain and curcumin, it provides a potent blend for detoxification and cellular support. Crafted with 100% natural ingredients, Ultimate Spike Detox is backed by research. It offers effective support for your cell's natural repair and recovery. Experience the only formula approved and used by Dr. Peter McCullough, a top freedom-fighting doctor who risked it all to bring you the truth. Head over to dailyclouthealth.com and use the code DailyClout to get 10% off plus free shipping. Again, that's dailyclouthealth.com and use the code DailyClout to get 10% off and get back to that pre-COVID feeling. Mm-hmm. Wow. So that is exciting. And that is a shot across the bow of big pharma. So it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, how can the federal government intervene in market forces like that?
Well, they certainly can do it through the Medicare prescription plan and say, listen, Medicare's going to pay for Eliquis what they pay in Canada and Europe.
Oh, wow.
And so that's going to affect the patients with Medicare plans. Right now, the Medicare recipients many times get the worst deal on pharmaceutical drugs. And then what we'll see in the commercial market. But Naomi, believe it or not, this is going to be good for the pharmaceutical companies.
Why?
Because there are so many branded drugs, doctors like me, I simply don't prescribe.
Right.
Because we can never get them approved. We just give up.
Right.
And so they have such a rigorous prior authorization and they're so expensive, nobody prescribes them.
Wow.
So I've always told the companies, listen, if you lowered price and you got it into range, people would pay for them. But right now you're pricing them to a ridiculous monthly dollar amount that nobody can afford. So believe it or not, if they were all priced reasonably, and they are, companies, can get a decent price for a new product. Mm-hmm. But $500 a month, that's like a new car lease for crying out loud for a drug.
Yeah.
So the example is back in the day when generic drugs were $3 a month, Pfizer came out with Lipitor, the best statin at the time. Mm-hmm. And they charged $30 a month. Mm-hmm. Okay, back in the day. And in their first year of sales, they hit $1.3 billion.
Wow.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
A new drug will come out today, and in its first year of sales, they'll price it at $2,000 a month. Wow. And their first year of sales, maybe they'll hit 50 million.
Amazing.
Maybe 20 million. So they're not getting the top line revenues anyway.
Right.
So Trump is doing big pharma a favor.
That's like a gold mine for political capital to do something that's going to play really well with consumers and also, not pick a fight with big pharma where they're already, there's already so much contention. Well, in the time we've got left, I really want to hear everything you've got to say about a new protocol that I'm told by our colleagues at the Wellness Company is showing some promise in oncology, and that is ivermectin and mebendazole. I don't know anything about this combination, and I don't know its relationship to parasites, but I know parasites are very much on people's minds right now. Please talk to me about this.
Well, the CDC got this going a few years ago with a report on what's called NPIs, neglected parasitic infections. Mm-hmm. And the CDC tells us that in general, we tend to neglect these, that there are parasites for sure in fish and various, water, for instance, stream water, eating sushi. If you ever gone to a restaurant and it says, warning, eating undercooked food could cause illness. They're talking about parasites. And when you eat sushi, you want sushi grade because you don't want to have parasites in the fish, that you eat, because you eat the eggs, one can get sick. So there's always a trust level there. That is it cooked enough? Is it sushi grade enough? Your stream water, did I handle the stream water correctly as I, was camping? Or you travel to Central America, South America, different situations. And then, vague symptoms, night sweats, skin rashes, abdominal cramping, diarrhea, weight loss, constipation. And so the testing for this is not precise. We get a stool ova and parasite, but it's not completely accurate. And the CDC warns us that people can be harboring parasitic infections. So that's the reason why the wellness company, we came up with a parasite cleanse combining ivermectin and mebendazole. We give a 90-day supply, even though a parasite cleanse could only last 21 days. But as you alluded to, people are very interested in the emerging data on both of these drugs in cancer.
Right. So are you seeing, am I understanding correctly, you're seeing a connection between parasites and cancer?
No, it's mainly the observation that the drugs that have anti-parasitic capabilities may have anti-neoplastic properties. And now multiple studies of both ivermectin and mebendazole have arrived at that conclusion. Mebendazole, there's actually human data. And just like there was early excitement with Taxol, remember Taxol derived from the yew tree?
Yes.
And there are other biologic agents, vincristine and vinblastine. They became part of conventional chemotherapy. They all did. But they all started out with this serendipitous discovery that they had some other property besides what we originally thought they did. And I think that's where we are with ivermectin and mebendazole. So patients can come to the wellness company and go through a safety checklist with the doctor. But if they've exhausted all other avenues to treat advanced cancer, surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, they consider this as an off-label attempt to additionally treat the cancer. So I've had some of my patients with advanced cancer. I always have them check with their oncologist. And every time the oncologists have told the patients, listen, go for it. Go to the wellness company and give this a whirl. Why not?
Yeah. And are you seeing good results, or is it too early to say for cancer?
I have a few anecdotes which are remarkable, and they're quite favorable. So this combination should quickly get into randomized trials by the National Cancer Institute. They should not delay. They should be rapidly incorporated into chemotherapeutic protocols. And we should get the answer because they're available, they are affordable and safe. And if they can help people, boy, our National Cancer Institute needs to move swiftly. This falls now under Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and then Robert F. Kennedy. And I hope they're moving swiftly on this.
Gosh, I hope so too. Sadly, with the discovery of SV40 in the mRNA injections, so many people are developing cancers and turbo cancers, and we need the antidotes or treatments very, very fast. So when people, I'm thinking of two of my loved ones who are dealing with breast cancer right now. If people are in treatment for cancer, they should call the wellness company and ask for what exactly? The parasite cleanse and see if it helps with their cancer treatment?
Right. So they navigate to the parasite cleanse, a combination of ivermectin and mebendazole, and then they engage with one of the wellness company doctors to discuss this primarily on the side of safety. So we'll want to make sure the other drugs don't interact, that there's not going to be liver or neurological toxicity. And we always make sure that they, clear it with their cancer doctors. And from my experience, that has not been a problem. It's mainly getting the prescription and getting it for a long enough duration. So it's offered in a combination capsule, and the duration is 90 days. So that's a decent duration. So it becomes very affordable.
And anecdotally, you've got cancer patients who, their tumors shrink, they feel better. What's your anecdotal result that you're seeing?
Well, I have an anecdote of a man who came to see me. He had heart disease. He's an attorney, but he had very advanced prostate cancer. The cancer had left the prostatic capsule. It metastasized to the pelvis and the spine. And the indicator that we have is called the blood PSA, or prostate-specific antigen. A normal level is less than 4. His was 200.
Ugh.
And so the cancer is clearly on the move. He has done everything possible with treatment, and he gave it a whirl. And I was stunned to learn that his PSA had plummeted to I think about 2.
Wow.
And he was thrilled that he finally got control over this. So again, it's anecdotes. There's no substitute for large prospective randomized trials. I just hope the National Cancer Institute is on the ball and paying attention to this populist move among the cancer community. You know, there's currently 20 million Americans with cancer. That's a big population. The NCI needs to listen to the group of cancer patients who want more options.
I mean, yes, but I'm not going to hold my breath. The more I learn about the cancer industry in the United States, the less sure I am that it's focused on finding an actual cure or treatment for cancer. But that's very cynical. Perhaps you feel differently.
Yeah, I hope. I'm not so cynical. I just think that the institutions move slowly. I just remember the excitement on Taxol. And again, the NCI moved far too slowly. The NCI and the NIH moved way too slowly about smoking causing lung cancer.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the most obvious example. I mean, really? It took, over 20 years for the Surgeon General to call the chiefs of medicine to Washington to review smoking causes lung cancer? Are we going to have to wait 20 years for a Surgeon General to call all the chiefs of medicine to Washington to review the dangers of the COVID vaccine? I mean, when the medical orthodoxy gets it wrong, and they got it wrong on smoking, they got it wrong on cocaine and hand washing. I mean, so believe me, the medical orthodoxy's got a history of getting it wrong. When they get it wrong, they don't quickly correct course.
No.
And doctors like myself, who actually do quickly arrive at the correct conclusions, we're typically become outcasts. We're pushed out of the orthodoxy.
I mean, the history of medicine shows that over and over. It's pretty heartbreaking because the nature of science and, medical discovery is the treatment is as good as it can be in, 1789. And then by 1801, something else is discovered. And it should be constantly iterated, right? It's dangerous for medicine not to course correct and to penalize doctors who are realizing that the standard of care is not the whole story. Well, let me now ask you a question in our remaining couple of minutes. I did a parasite cleanse with actually under the guidance of TWC's Dr. Hadar Elbaz. And I just really want to praise the kind of TWC approach because, I got my bloods drawn and various samples and analyzed, and it completely transformed the direction I got from her, changed my life because I was, eating the wrong things. I thought I ate a really clean diet. I was, not making changes I needed to make. I was deficient in various vitamins. I didn't realize I was. Not going to bore you with that, but she did give me a parasite cleanse. It was very effective in the sense of I could, I felt much better after it was over. But in the middle of it, I felt a lot of, I don't know how to put this. It was very emotionally draining. Have you ever heard about that?
Well, you're pointing out the gut-brain connection, which is just being explored, a topic we talk about a lot at the Wellness Company. But if there are parasites, they're typically in the intestines. If they are resident there, they're influencing the microbiome. And the microbiome communicates to the brain.
Oh, my goodness. So why would it make someone feel, a lot of very negative emotions while these parasites are being killed off? Like, what would that science be? You feel much
Yeah,
better
I
after.
can't possibly know, Dr. Wolf. It's just that the microbes produce factors called cytokines. Our immune system is reacting to them, and those cytokines do readily penetrate the brain.
Wow.
That's the reason why people feel differently on different diets. So I had a chance to interview Dr. Sabine Hazen on my show. She's a world's expert. And I asked her, I said, when you go eat junk food, why is it you want some more junk food the next day?
Right.
She goes, it's because your microbiome changes and it sends signals to your brain.
Oh my goodness. This
Yeah.
is so fascinating. So possibly the initial bad feelings followed by good feelings could be the die-off of parasites
Yeah.
okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So interesting. And lastly, is there any connection that you've seen between parasites and the autoimmune problems that people are having now, especially vaccinated people, or is that totally unrelated?
No, it's certainly possible, and particularly the cell on the blood count that indicates that is called the eosinophils. So hypereosinophilia is characteristic of certain parasitic infections. So anybody who's been to the Nile River area of the Middle East, watch out. It's loaded with parasites. It comes in through the skin. We see elevated levels of eosinophils. And if you let that form of parasitic infection dwell in the body, that's called schistosomiasis. That goes to the liver. And that form of a parasitic infection directly causes liver cancer. So there is the parasitic cancer, example.
Wow. This is so eye-opening. And I know so many people listening are going to check this out. The Wellness Company, especially with, the products that you formulated, are so ahead of the curve. And I always find it incredibly useful as a precaution to follow, what you're doing and the new products that you're bringing out. You don't bring them out or make claims for them that are not based on solid leads or evolving evidence. And you're always very transparent about where the science is, which is actually very reassuring. And people who started with a spike detox 2 years ago or whenever it first came out are probably way ahead in their health journey than people who are just waiting. So I'm sure the same is true for the parasite protocol. So we've run out of time, Dr. McCullough. It's always so valuable to speak with you. Where do people find you? How do they support you? How do they support the Peter McCullough Foundation and all of your projects?
Well, go to the Wellness Company and use the promo code for Dr. Wolf's program, Daily Cloud. McCullough Foundation is www.mcculloughfnd.org. We're generously supported by so many donors, but 75% of our donors is less than $100. And we run a terrific operation that's essentially influencing health policy all over the world. Make sure you subscribe to Focal Points. That's the top medical Substack now. Get a free email every morning about 5 a.m. Get updated on the most recent studies with citations. My show, America Out Loud Talk Radio, McCullough Report, as well as Pulse, which I do on the America Out Loud platform. It's your chance to ask questions and get them answered. None of our public health officials have yet to hold an open mic town hall from the public to ask questions, even the current administration. And I do it every week, Naomi. And I hope our public health officials can grow in their strength and confidence to begin to answer Americans' questions.
Well put. Thank you so much, as always, for being a beacon of light and for saving so many lives, so many people's health. So grateful to you. And everyone be sure to support TWC at TWC Health /Daily Cloud. As Dr. McCullough said, support Dr. McCullough's foundation. So important. And, follow him everywhere. All right. Thank you, Dr. McCullough. Till next time.
Thank you.